Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Viswa.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For joining in. We'll bring in Professor Ayran. We have a slight problem. Okay. Slight problem is Kirpal has mixed up the time a little bit, and I'm trying to reach him.
Okay. Oh, okay.
He thinks it's 3:00. So it's okay. It happens. Actually, it happens every day. Kirpal.
With Kirpal.
It happens every day. So I'm used to it. So it's okay. It can take 6 minutes. All right. I'm trying to reach him right now. So those who are online viewing, please bear with us. And of course, I would like to introduce you, Viswa, to those who are there now. Thank you for joining this panel. The title of this panel, I have to say, was thought of by Viswa himself. I have to give you credit. But the objective,
the
objective. Sorry?
Credit or blame?
No. I think it's a fascinating topic and title. Okay. Let me get them on board first.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yes, Bogdan is helping. Is that your library, home library?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
A part of it.
You are?
It's a part of my library.
Part of it. Okay. Is it a whole library in one room? Is it a whole?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I did expect this, so.
It's okay. Don't worry. I'm sure we can all wait.
Yeah, we can. All right.
And besides, you're lovely to look at.
Thank you. I think it's not exactly my favorite color, but I felt like it.
It's very flattering.
I like
the color.
Yeah.
Color is very flattering. I really enjoyed what you said just now, especially when you started talking about the interaction between your father and you, and what your father told you.
Yes.
That what do you say, that the golden door is perhaps too clean for this world, and you should do it anyway. I thought that was powerful.
It is. It just blew me away, and I just stuck with it. But the way he said it was it was
prophetic. It sounded prophetic.
My father was, I'll tell you one thing, he was like a prophet. A lot of things, he was pushing me to do this back in 2017. I kept delaying, actually. I delayed for a year plus because because it takes a lot of investment of time and money.
Yes.
When you're trying to build a concept or make it into something real, you have to stop a lot of things. And you take away time from something which makes you money to do what gets you through the day. So he would say, no, you focus on this. He kept telling me again and again. I was wondering, he's being persistent. So he was prophetic. Yes. And I felt that when he left, that his legacy was left in me, like what he had to tell me. Somehow I received all of it. That he didn't lose any a message that was unsaid, that everything was needed to be said. Okay, now Ayran should be there now. Okay. Right. Okay, there we go.
Oh, there. Hi, Ayran. Hi, Ayran. How are you?
He's getting the...
Hello.
The conspiracy analyst is here. I think his internet connection doesn't seem to be too strong.
Actually, we have tested it. We've tested it. We've got the highest level.
Can you guys hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I can hear you. I recall that voice. Ayran?
Good. So, what are we doing?
I was having a wonderful conversation with this young lady, and then you came in. That's what happened.
Yeah, and now you disappeared.
He's so offended by what I said, he left.
No, he's all right. So how are you doing? You're excited? You're excited? What do I call you? Ayran? Professor?
Ayran.
I'm having fun with listening to the people, and I really enjoy.
You enjoying it?
The conversation. Yeah.
Okay,
great. No, the
that's
I thought it was very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Because what it's done, it's actually that I had for what I was going to say, and I'm going to start differently now because of some of the things.
Oh God, too bad.
And also because is it broken up? Viswa, can you hear me ordinarily?
It's kind of broken up, but we can hear you, but it's not smooth.
Okay, doesn't matter. Just talk.
Don't worry, we can still hear you.
I went to the max.
Okay.
Went to the maximum speed that my internet provider can give me.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
That looks Ayran.
So
that looks like a beach attire. What you're wearing. I'm so envious.
What? A beach attire?
Okay.
So that's a very light shirt. It's hot out there. It's 30 degrees.
Okay. As the moderator.
Now, where's Kirpal?
As the moderator.
I'm going to
give 5 minutes for Kirpal because Kirpal said that he forgot and he thought it was at 3 p.m. So we can.
Shall we give him until 3 p.m.?
Yeah, we can chit chat. Okay.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of time, and at least you can both because you haven't met each other virtually, and you come from different spheres of life. Okay, so
I was just sharing with you just now, Tahira, what you said, what you shared, and thanks for sharing it. Although it's very personal, I'm sure it was quite emotional for you as you were sharing it about your father. Bedside counsel from someone as close to you as your father is not just prophetic; it's profound. Okay. And it's life altering. I'm sure it was life altering for you, and it was meant to happen. And the fact that you found reason to reiterate, to share that, now makes it even more important for you to follow through.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And to follow through with like-minded individuals like us,
absolutely.
On your side. So that I think it's your father's way of perhaps making you feel that you're not alone in this journey. And I'm sure there were times when you felt that you were alone. God has very interesting ways of sending a message to you through human beings as messengers.
Yes. Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Sorry, I'm tearing a bit. All right. Absolutely. It's life changing, and It's interesting. He passed on just 2 weeks before the pandemic was officiated. You know,
Wow.
it was the time to, yeah, it was officiated on January 30th. I think that's WHO announced, right? 30th of Jan, I remember. He passed on just 2 weeks before. And it's also amazing how we are launching this right at a time. This month, it's quite intense for the entire world. There's been, I don't know whether there's been as many protests. I mean, look what's happened in the UK. This entire the UK, they have this, they call it a truth tour. I don't know what's called, protests. It's all over the UK. And then Belarus, huge. India has been in lockdown. I spoke to 5 months. Okay. We have one of our participants who's just, thank God she's recovering. Yes, COVID-19, thank God she's recovering, but the situation's not good enough. But this is right, we are in the cusp of you know, like a break. It's a day break for humanity. It's up to us whether what we want to choose. And it's not just like that. We have to make a choice. It's our own will. It's our own decision. We can't just live our life in this merry-go-round and think that others are going to sort it out. We actually have to take a step, a small step. But we're so used to being bystanders. I think in Asia, we tend to be bystanders. Of course, the rest of the world, I'm saying generally people. It's easy to be one. And just to watch, read the news, oh, this was happening here, this was happening there. But what are you going to do about it? That's the thing. I'm not talking about joining the protests. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about coming up with ideas and solutions in forms of goodness. That's what I'm talking about. So, absolutely, yeah. So, and that's what golden door is I was sharing. It's a door opening to the other side. And in order to go to the other side, you need to take that step. So it's not sufficient to just be a writer. You need to make that word a manifestation of what you've written.
Very good.
Right?
Exactly.
You need to embody it with a spirit. We have so many writers.
Yes.
Writing.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes. Yes.
Take the next step now. Okay. Please give me a few seconds to call Kirpal.
Sure. No worries. No pressure.
You can discuss amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself, please. Professor Ayran, please introduce yourself so the audience can understand who you are. Tell them a little bit about yourself, and then Viswa. Go ahead.
Yep.
Proceed, Professor. You first. You are senior to us.
Who am I talking to now? I just talking to you guys.
There is an audience.
No, there are people watching.
There are people watching. Right now online at the same time, 24 people. Please introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? Yes.
Okay. Now, what I found really interesting, Tahira, is that you mentioned exactly that, and that is the question, who am I? And you keep asking that question. Now, that's an old, as far as I know, is it Hindu or is it Buddhist or something like that? But it comes from that tradition. Because I remember back now, 20 or even more years ago, we used to do some workshops. They were sort of encounter workshops for people to find out who they actually were. Behind the masks, behind the shields, behind the various coverings which have either been put on them because of race, or that they chose to put on themselves, in part in order to protect themselves. So what I found is that I was teaching at a university in Canada, in Eastern Canada. Prince Edward Island was the place. A very small place. It's a tiny little province. The whole population is only 160,000 people, but because it's a province, it has a legislature of 30 members, and it has a university. And I went there from Toronto with a small group of people because we thought we could make an example here of what you are now. Now, this was, my goodness, 50 years ago. In effect, to see if we could create a society, assist people in creating a society which was more helpful, more humane, and where the university would actually do what the university is supposed to do, particularly in the social sciences, and that is to tell people the truth about what's going on. Now, to make a difficult and long story short, I eventually left there. And the reason that I left there was because I found out that the university did not want me to tell people the truth. The business faculty had a note going around the students. I actually found a written version of that and created quite a scandal in the university because they said, if you want a degree in business of any kind, then you're better off not to take a course from Professor von Dreger. Now, why would they say that? Anyway, I'm a fighter when it's necessary, but at that point, in order to save my soul, in order to save my, what you correctly, as far as I'm concerned, call integrity. And that is integrity not only in what I put out, but integrity as a human being, that I am a whole, healthy human being. I took off for New Zealand because that was about as far in the so-called civilized world as I could get. And I wanted to just sort of, you're looking at a dropout. I escaped there and joined a cooperative community. Now, I've been in the shadows, not like the shadow government, but my own kind of shadow, in which that I've been on the edges of things all the time. And it just occurred to me this morning that one of the evidences that you are a deeply intuitive prophetess, Tahira, is that you found me. You found me at the edge of world civilization here on the northeastern coast of Australia. I mean, you got Cairns, which is a city of about only 160,000 people. But otherwise, we are what? We're 1,500 kilometers from Brisbane. So we are well away from the centers. And life here in Cairns is proceeding more or less as normal, except for the fact that the whole visitors and tourist industry has been very badly affected because the small businesses have all lost their visitors because they largely come also from Asia, from your side of the world over there, from Singapore and from China and so on. And so the small businesses have really been suffering. So that's, in very short, my background. Having left the university, I've still an ear and an eye on what's going on, and particularly in the last 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 years because the current American administration is very different from the ones that preceded it. And as far as I can see, they're one of the most important key places of where some major changes, more than changes, transformations are happening. So I've now more and more with various people on the internet, in the, I suppose you'd call it the alternative news people, the digital soldiers, as some of them are called or call themselves, in order to find out what is actually going on, and in order to look at the many collusions. You use the word conspiracy. And the media has been successful in that the moment the word conspiracy is used, people immediately recognize that. They don't recognize it. They are fooled into thinking that this is falsehood, that this is fake news. But the rule of conspiracies, and the conspiracies, the very definition of the word, is usually that it's a group of people who are colluding against the public interest, who are colluding against the health, against the information, against the feeling of security of people. So now we have a genuine pandemic happening, and that pandemic is a pandemic of misinformation, of confusion, of chaos, blocks to the truth. And so my recent history has been looking at what are these blocks? What are these hindrances to people finding out what's going on? And I've been doing that thanks to the internet here in Cairns in far northeastern Australia on the coast. That's basically my background.
Okay, thank you, Ayran. Of course, that's I don't know how I found you. I think we found each other. You wrote, I saw you in that group, right? Awakening for Youth. Then you messaged me. Yes, and I'm glad that you're here. You bring a lot of knowledge and wisdom. I would like to also hear from Viswa. Viswa, could you introduce yourself? Viswa is a former member of parliament with Singapore and a thought leader. Tell the audience a little more about that.
Thank you, Tahira. And Ayran, I enjoyed what you just shared, and I really think it's a disservice to label people. I think the world is so comfortable, so adept at labeling, labeling you as a conspiracy analyst. And you're right, the term conspiracy doesn't do justice to what you're trying to achieve. In fact, it gives a sense, gives the audience or the reader a sense that you are up to no good. Because the word conspiracy is pejorative by definition.
Yes.
So really, thank you for clarifying that. and that goes to what I'm about. I've spent the past 38 years. I'm not as young as I look. I spent the past 38 years, trying to get Singaporeans to open up and speak up. Singapore is many things. I mean, I wouldn't leave Singapore. It's my home, but it is also there's also been a trade-off in this country for all the modernization and creature comforts that we have, which is the envy of many people around the world in many countries. The trade-off has been that we've had to accept as the norm, as the convention, a certain climate of fear. People have always been afraid of speaking up. It doesn't mean that you don't think for yourself. It doesn't mean that you don't deal with esoteric topics like the truth. So over time, what has happened is people have submerged and suppressed our own ability to analyze and think for ourselves. And as Darwin says, as aspects of your life, of your body that you don't use over time devolve and drop off like the tail, right? So when you don't apply that part of your brain to think for yourself, to analyze, after some time, you actually lose that faculty. That's my fear. I don't think we have gone to a point of no return. So it is very important that it's better late than never, that we start asking these inconvenient questions. So in 2015, I actually started an online site called IQ. It's an online site called IQ, which stands for Inconvenient Questions. So it's had a pretty strong following. What I've been trying to do is to interview people on video, right? Interesting people in Singapore and the region, people who have a point of view, and then I ask them inconvenient questions, not to put them in a spot, but to force them to actually explain themselves. And Ayran, I think that's what happened in our conversation over the phone the last time we spoke, right? I asked you a few inconvenient questions, and there you came out, to explain yourself. So, I feel very strongly that if you want the truth, we must be prepared to be inconvenienced. The truth is not something that comes out naturally. You've got to push it. You've got to demand it. You've got to not just always cajole, but you've got to pressure it. God doesn't appear unless he feels compelled. Mm-hmm. The truth is personification of God, and the truth is not going to appear to someone who doesn't demand it with every sinew, bone, and nerve. And that's my truth. That's what I want to say for now. I spent a term as a member of parliament and and as a nominated member of parliament, because I don't believe in partisan politics, because no matter which party you join, you are compelled to follow the rules of that party, and you'll, after some time, lose a sense of who you are. So I accepted the position as the nominated member of parliament, which is non-partisan. And one of the first, and my maiden speech was, and I chose it carefully, it was on going back to basics. I delivered a 1-hour speech in Parliament on the pledge, the Singapore Pledge, because my point was the Constitution of Singapore can't hold primacy when it is so easily amendable and amended. So what has to remain the center of the definition, center and the definition of what the Singaporean is and who we are as a society, as a people, has to be the pledge. The pledge that is not amendable. The pledge that was actually written in 1965, and we all have to recite it in school every morning. So it cannot be a dead letter. The pledge has to be what defines us as a people. And it reads, the starting lines are like this. We, the citizens of Singapore, pledge ourselves as one united people, regardless of race, language, or religion, to build a democratic society based on justice and equality, so as to achieve happiness, prosperity, and progress for our nation. There are many, many words there that can be duplicitous. There are many words there that can be intentionally misinterpreted and misrepresented. So we need to understand and have a collective conscience of what each word in the pledge means. And by so doing, we become truly a society and a people. Thank you.
Basically, Singaporeans should ask themselves, who are you? Who are you? And going back to what we had originally placed that who we're supposed to be. And I think along the way, sometimes we have lost track of things. And that statement, that pledge is actually a very bold and courageous statement. To live like that requires courage.
And ahead of its time, in 1965, ahead of its time.
That means these values are actually timeless, if you think about it. Yes. We need to go back to it, but live with progressive mindset and unity. What's happening now is unity. So, Ayran, do you want to say anything in response to that? Because I think that Kirpal may not come online. I don't know what happened. Let it be. It's okay. We can proceed as planned.
Yeah.
Right? You want to say something, Professor?
So shall we assume that the panel discussion is commenced?
Let's assume that the panel is commenced. Okay. So we will be exploring on this definition of truth, the narrow definition of truth. And but not just that statement. How can we explore real action items to take us back onto this path? Truth is such a subjective word, but this pathway that will take us forward. We are spiraling round and round. Okay, take us forward so we can progress. Now we looked at some areas. You want me to mention those things, Viswa?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
So we look at some areas. All right. Mediation is one of them, because we are seeing different mindsets. Everybody's carrying their own truth. They're fighting for something. But where is it leading to? There's so much conflict. We're talking about mass, no mass. We're talking about sovereignty, the sovereignty movement. We're talking about the lockdowns and when I look at anything on Google, on Facebook, I don't even know what is true anymore. And then now almost, I think quite a number of things are blocked out and removed. Quite a number of things which I've written has been removed, and I don't even know why. I don't think there's anything controversial what I've written. So it's become an unusual world with agendas, and there are too many different agendas, which means it's just like a family that's broken up. They're all fighting, and it doesn't go anywhere, and it's just it's just chaos. with the agenda for self, agenda for this and that, and it's all hidden. Now, how do you resolve that? What does mediation involve? Mediation is, I think you are best to talk about that. Why mediation as one of the solutions? And then another one is possibly we talk about education. We'll go into that. Why education? And the other one was democratizing leadership. Why leadership? We will go into that. And how can we take these steps? As for our audience, you can also, we'll bring you in later on in the Q&A. Take these core steps, and what's more than that? When we leave this panel, what can we really do? All right. So, Viswa, would you like to talk about the mediation?
Yeah.
Why is it so important?
Before I go into the mediation, I'd like to just start by saying this. I think we need to acknowledge the paradox of globalization. Globalization, to me, and I think to many of us, is actually a paradox, where you see the interplay of centrifugal and centripetal forces, right? I mean, the centripetal is, as you see the centrifugal force, of expansion, of going out, going out to different countries, and embracing the world. You're also seeing tremendous nationalism, centripetal, right? Tremendous nationalism. So it's really a paradox of this globalization, because we are talking about, on the one hand, we are a global citizen. We belong to the world. Our allegiance should not be constrained by the boundaries of the state that I belong to. We are talking about serious conversations about multiple citizenship, dual citizenship. You see what I'm saying? So there is this sense that the next generation want to be members of the next generation and the subsequent generations. They don't want to be locked down, so to speak, in one state, in one definition, in one paradigm. They want to be defined broadly so that they can tap the opportunities of the world. That's globalization. It's a spirit. It's an attitude more than an action or activity, right? But the problem with that is that even as we are seeing that sort of liberation of the spirit, we are seeing a clamp down within each country and a blockade in the borders, like the Syrian refugee crisis, as an example. So people are becoming a lot more inward looking as you are outward looking, right? So this is causing tremendous tension in the world. It is exacerbating adversity. It is beginning to make people feel that if you don't fight for yourself, you can't win the treasures of the world. You see, we are living in a world of this paradox. Now, we first need to acknowledge it. And what it therefore means is we need to acknowledge that adversity is the order of things. Now, when you have adversity and when you accept that adversity is the nature of things, what you then need to do is be prepared to listen to the contrary view. Now, I am sure that there are many things that Ayran, you'll be saying today that I wouldn't agree with. And there are many things that I may say that you won't agree with. But we should be able to disagree in a manner that is not disagreeable. The problem is we have all become so self-righteous, so damn self-righteous. We feel that my truth is the only truth in this world. We need to be a lot more accepting of variations of truth. We have to. Now, otherwise, this globalization and the paradox of globalization will defeat us as humankind. So first and foremost, I think we need to learn to respect another person's truth. And just because he asserts a different point of view as his truth doesn't mean that he's wrong and I'm right. But the problem is, if we do not watch us ourselves crossing that line, that very important but fine line between righteousness and self-righteousness. Righteousness is saying, I have the right to have conviction in my views. I believe in what I'm saying, and I stand by my truth. Each one of us should. But when you say, I'm sorry, my truth is the only truth that has the license to exist in this world, you have crossed the line from righteousness to self-righteousness, which should be abhorred. So If we want to coexist, we need respect. Respect and open-mindedness to listen to another person's point of view. And in the end, if you can't agree, then disagree, but in a manner that is not disagreeable. And that is the reason why the world needs to move a lot more in resolving disputes. We need to move away from litigation, and we have moved away from litigation to arbitration. And now from arbitration, we need to move towards mediation as the default way of resolving conflicts. Because the difference between arbitration and mediation is arbitration is binary in outcome. If one party has to win, the other has to lose. But we all know that in life, that is not the truth. In life, what happens is you can very well have two people winning at the same time. You can have two people losing at the same time. So when you go to mediation, it is very possible for two parties to walk away from the mediation settlement feeling that each one of them has won. It's about going back to relationships away from transactions. So this is what I want to say in a nutshell, that we are living, whether we like it or not, we are living in a world that is defined by the paradox of globalization, the centrifugal and centripetal forces. It's a confused world. In a confused world, things are going to get a lot more adversarial. There's going to be a lot more conflict. But we should not be dismayed by it. We should see that as an opportunity for us to actively listen to each other. But the way to be listened to each other has to change. We've got to be willing to accept that multiple truths can coexist so that we respect another person's view while we hold on to our view. And the way we resolve the conflict has to be away from binary to mediatory. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Viswa. That was a very strong statement which you believe in, and there is that is absolutely true. Actually, that is the basis of why we have all these problems in the first place. The disparity. So, placing mediation in the forefront and carrying out respect and honoring the other's beliefs, and going into group awareness, not self-righteousness, but into righteousness in heart and spirit, and into the group care and concern and for humanity. So, Professor, you would like to share something based on your thoughts on what Viswa said? Because I see something brewing.
Yes, you'll find me coming from a very different paradigm, a very different point of view. And here is how I'll share it with you, because there are any number of things now that are. Let me first ask procedurally, how come Kirpal is not here? Are we recording for something to be broadcast later? I thought you, Tahira, were going to do an introduction first for an hour.
Well, Kirpal has missed the timing. I don't know what happened. We can't reach him. So it doesn't matter. Just continue.
Again.
Sorry?
Are you not doing are you not giving a speech for an hour or something?
He was supposed to be here at the 2:40, but somehow something has happened. We cannot reach him. So we continue.
That's not my question. My question is, were you, Tahira,
yes,
going to give an hour worth of introduction first?
Of Kirpal, of you?
No. For the conference that we are in now, was it not to start with you giving worth of presentation? You were the founder and you were going to give a speech.
That was at 1:30. That's over.
Is that not?
That's over already. Now is the panel.
Okay.
We finished at 1:30.
Well, I'm really missing.
We finished at 1:30.
I'm really missing Kirpal.
Okay, never mind. All right, doesn't matter. We finished that already. Okay, we are at this panel now. All right. So what do you thought? Yes.
Here we go. I see it very differently, or perhaps not so differently, but I'll give you my view. And that is, my view is that ordinary human beings who have not been in some fashion or other very badly confused, who have not been, the current word, who have not been subjected to all sorts of misinformation and disinformation. Ordinary human beings, if they're brought up in a reasonable environment, have no problem in ordinary situations that are right in front of them. That's a very simple matter. Unless we are blocked as human beings, our capacity is to recognize the truth that's there right in front of us. Certainly in areas dealing with our own family, our community, our city, even our region, and including our nation, our country, that unless something is put there, some obstruction, some block, then in effect, the ordinary person will see what's right there. So I don't agree that this demands a great deal of concentration or commitment, that I need to do that. I see ordinary human beings as being able to recognize the ordinary situations and who is doing what, how are they doing it, and what the consequences are, very differently. So I come from a point of view which says that what needs to be looked at are the obstructions. What are the impediments that are put in front of people so that they cannot do what, as far as I'm concerned, the goddess has given them as an inherent capacity, and that is to see what's going on. I also come from the point of view that unless people are somehow or other very badly brought up in the sense of their sense of competition, their sense of conflict, their sense of adversary behavior is somehow or other strengthened, not that they were born that way, but that the system that has educated them, so-called, has particularly those tendencies that ordinary people of the time will cooperate. For me, that's the essence. So there's this age-old philosophical disagreement about what's human nature and what is life. Who was it? Hobbes that said, well, life is nasty, brutish, and short. I don't agree with that at all. I think as God has created human beings, our basic instinct is that of cooperation, of assisting other people. And I can point to, if people will look at little kids, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds in a nursery, in a kindergarten, they don't know each other. They're brought there by their parents. One kid has a whole bunch of blocks. Another kid is sitting there beside that young girl or young boy. And what do? They start cooperating in building something or other. I go back to where Darwin recommended it, and that is, Darwinism is meant to be the survival of the fittest. Bullshit. That's not what Darwin said if one reads him more carefully. What Darwin said, in my reading of him, is that most of nature, and that includes us human beings, are in effect cooperative. 99%. Yes, we can get into some squabbles with one another. Unless those squabbles are exacerbated by the culture, then yes, sometimes people may have a go, and there may be some broken bones, and somebody may have a broken leg or whatever, because there's a fight that breaks out, more among men than among women, although women can also tear at each other very badly. But as far as I can see, the evidence is that young kids show us that unless we have somehow been miseducated, that we are fine as people. Now, several things I got to go into. The point about the contradiction somehow or other in globalization, I don't see that to be the case therefore either. We, as a humanity, are now in a global village. The global village has various sides to it, various ethnic groupings, various cultural expressions in it. If one looks at a city, I think Toronto, for instance, in Canada, is a good example. Then you have a Chinese quarter, you have an Indian quarter, as well as the English quarter, and the Polish quarter, and the Russian quarter. And if one, that's actually working very, very well. And I would extend that to the whole world as the global situation. So I am not at all for making some kind of a uniform global culture. but rather having dear, who was it? The Chinese big dictator, Mao Zedong, who said, "Let 1,000 flowers bloom." I wish he'd actually have that happen. He didn't, because he had, he went completely in the other direction. In the global village, there will be nations. Now, not nations fighting against each other, or countries, or regions, but rather regions which have, at least for a long time still, their own particular expressions of culture, their own ethnic costumes, their own dances, their own music, their own operas or their own folk songs, or in Australia here, the Aboriginal people doing their particular dances and beating rocks and so on together. I don't see any conflict in that at all, unless there is an agency in there which actually tries to put people against each other, to create war and violence. And that is what I see as the main enemy, the main enemy which we are now facing, with whom, Viswa, I see no possibility of any kind of reasonable discussion, because those people, however they've got there, their own cosmology, which gives a very precise information and background as to how they got there. But they can be certified, and most of the population now recognizes they're actually psychopaths, they're sociopaths. And we now know the are raised. It's the psychopathic tendencies of those people which are encouraged, which are exacerbated. And then, like I told you, Viswa, the other day, and I'll tell this to our whole audience in case some of them don't know, they actually have ceremonies, absolutely crazy ceremonies, which an ordinary person would exists, but we now have videos to show that. One of them is the Bohemian Grove in California. And there are top people in the world, and I'm talking about top politics, top corporate leaders, top academic people, and other, recognized, presumably responsible leaders in the world. They gather there. They stand in front of a 40-foot high stone owl. They dress in black clothes, black hats on them. They carry torches. And their main ceremony, the cremation of care. Cremation of care. Now, if there are any humane sentiments left in those people, and those people are that very small elite, the 1% of 1%, who are actually controlling and managing certainly the highlights of what's going on in the world. And as we now see in Australia, in Victoria, they're minions. They're paid or, what's the other word? Intimidated politicians or health professionals. They have been given the power in order to shut down the society, in order to lock people up, in order to have people wear masks. History, we have back 100 or more years ago at least, that in order to muzzle people, in order to make people feel insecure, uncertain, unworthy, that you mask them. Is there a coincidence now that people are being asked to be masked? Or in effect, scientifically, it is not at all health. So we are now facing a real enemy. And just to conclude this, what I see happening is that enemy has to be taken on full blast. And there are people in the world, if you look at human society a bit like either an ant pile or a beehive, there are soldiers. And when an enemy comes up that cannot be negotiated, then the soldier ants or the soldier bees go to fight in order to stop that vicious attack which is happening. And that's the perspective from which I come, that there is a vicious, psychopathic, small oligarchy, which is actually attacking humanity. Australia and New Zealand, now some of the key points. And from what I hear from a lot of people, particularly young people, I'll finish, particularly young people, is that they are aware of this. I just come from 300 people who gathered here in Cairns. That's quite a lot of people for the small city of Cairns, because 4% of a place like Melbourne would be. And 100 people now, with the various speakers, including myself, I found tremendous resonance in an understanding. This is not this particular group trying to put down their particular opinions to someone else. This is people looking for integrity and truth. So what I see Tahira is doing, that we need to go through a path through the golden door. And what I see more and more, particularly young, I don't know what you call the ones that are now on the same wavelength. I'll give you just one among many, many examples that I could give you. A young woman here in Australia. She originally came from Lebanon. I just found her because people tell me where to look on the YouTube. She's gone on YouTube, and she's gone somewhat reluctantly, because quite right, they could come in, bust down her door, as they have done to a pregnant woman here in Australia, and arrest her. So she is, she's using initials for politicians because she doesn't want to say the whole name. Here is a young woman, she's probably in her 30s, and she's like you, Tahira. She's tremendously intuitive. I find her highly spiritually perceptive, and she can put together the pieces of the puzzle, the financial situation, the educational situation, the situation in health, in food, and then the political situation. And I'm not talking about political, not as political parties, but it comes from the old Greek word. The polis is the city-state or the community. Politics is meant to be the business of the community as opposed to our own individual business. She is now talking about that. Her name happens to be JCK. And she is the one that's now started a group so far on YouTube called Quantum Truth.
Ah, yes.
The Great Awakening.
Yes.
That's the name of that one. And I find listening to that woman, she is coming with high intelligence, as we sometimes say from the left brain. She's coming from high intuition and discernment, and she's combining what we are able to do as human beings with what is happening now to prevent us, and how that can in effect be stopped.
All right. Okay.
One more thing, the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, 2 words for knowledge. One was doxa. Doxa is the personal truth that a person carries. And I totally agree with, if I've heard you correctly, Viswa, that the personal truth that a person carries is very important and not to be denied, because that's their personal truth. But beyond that, above that, the greater one is episteme, which is knowledge, which is wisdom, which is science in the original Latin term, which is not the reductionist science that we have now, but rather science in the original word meant knowledge, an understanding, a comprehension of what's going on. So we need, as a people, to have an agreement on the words that we use, on the language that we speak. And that can bring us to a recognition of what the general truth is. Now, I'm not saying absolute truth, but the ordinary truth, which people will recognize because they have common sense, as long as that common sense is not drummed out of them or quote unquote educated out of them. Or what happens in universities, which are now accused of treason. Universities, particularly in the humanities, are accused of treason. Like a French author did in a book in French, La Trahison des Clercs, which was published, I think, about close to 100 years ago. And that is not that they're not telling correct things about what's happening in the world, particularly history, political studies, sociology. They are leaving out very, very significant things, which if the people knew that, everything would change hugely. And the attacks, for instance, on Manhattan and on the Pentagon in the year 2001 is a key one. There's been continuous propaganda that this is in effect done by some Arabs living in some sort of cave. This was done by the Secret Service agencies of the United States And the key people that organized and monitored and programmed the whole thing was the Secret Service of Israel, the Mossad. And that is known by people who are writers, and all their various books, their personalities, their reputations have been attacked, have been put down. And these are the obstructions. Because if people found that, just think for a moment, what would happen if not only the American people, but the other people in the world would fight that the government of the United States, through cells in its secret service agencies, had actually planned for some 20 years the destruction of the Twin Towers and the death of more than 3,000 Americans. Now, when the American population finds that out, that will make a enormous. And the university departments, don't tell people that. University departments, your turn.
Yeah, Professor, sorry. You've shared a lot. Kirpal is going to be joining us now. It's okay. So thank you. I mean, great sharing. You know, I mean, you're a soldier. Okay, that's what you are, as you told me before. You're fighting for this this dark space that we are the battle that we have with a certain enemy, these controllers, and I know that. I think Viswa, you are actually dealing with a different group of people who require mediation as a solution. And Ayran is talking about another entire group that requires a battle. This means in order to deal with this, it's a kind of a battle. But I'm not for a physical battle. For me, it's, I see this whole thing as more spiritual. You're different worlds. You both come from different worlds, different people that you're dealing with. That's the matter, right? And I'm just going to see, because I was a bit distracted just now. Kirpal was just logging in, and both of you are actually correct, absolutely right. And it's a different approach for different groups of people. Different. Would you like to say something, Viswa?
Yes.
Please say something. Yes.
You know, I don't, Ayran, I don't disagree with you. I'm sure that there are people that exist that you have described, but I don't think we should be cowed by the tenacity of the endeavor, what they are doing. And I don't think that we should give up, the rest of us. Neither should we be too eager to take arms against a sea of troubles. I think we should be righteous in the way we do it, as exactly what Tahira is doing in this endeavor. You know, you don't wait for someone else to carry it.
Yeah.
You step forward, knowing very well that you may not succeed as you planned. But as her father told her in prophetic counsel, you know, deathbed counsel, which is profound, you still should go ahead and do it if you believe in something.
Yes.
You know, that's where logic ends and aspiration begins.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we have become too binary in the way we look at things in this world.
Yes.
I think if we start looking at the gray and not just the black and white, we will see greater reason for hope. And if we start, if you're too logical in assessing the pros and cons of everything that we do, we will end up being in paralysis. Because I can tell you, you can overanalyze something and justify to yourself that you shouldn't do it in the end and feel good about it. I've seen this happen to so many of us. Mm. So what I urge is, while it may be true that there are pockets of people in this world who do the kind of things, vicious things that you're talking about, you know, like the cremation of the soul or cremation of care, I'm sure they exist. Just like the KKK and many other groups, even in Asian countries, they exist. But should we allow ourselves to be defeated by them? The answer is no. We should stand up against them, but not carry arms and fight with them. We should maintain our moral high ground and do good the way we want to do good, and not be drawn into a battlefield, which is what they want. So if we continue to be righteous in the way we do it, the way Tahira is doing it, the way many other individuals in the world are stepping forward and say, I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to put my skin in the game and do it. I feel that, I feel that desperation sometimes, or oftentimes, is the elixir of change. And there's no greater time than now to experience desperation. Am I right? I feel at a philosophical level that COVID was God's gift to us to hit the reset button. Long overdue. I'm not trivializing the pain and suffering that people are going through, but you see, at the end of the day, we need to be brought down to earth, where there is a certain large equalizer. Regardless of how rich, how poor, how strong, how weak you are susceptible to this virus. And the virus is a metaphor. It's a metaphor, about the truth of life. And the truth of life that we are being forced to confront is that it is not always beautiful. God doesn't always manifest in a beautiful form. God can also manifest in a form of anger. So at the end of the day, we must be able to make use of the opportunity that's presented to us when there is a global equalization that's taking place, where people are beginning to search their souls. Finally, a lot of us around the world, we are not going to be defeated by individuals, who say otherwise. This is an opportunity. COVID has given us the opportunity where, and COVID is happening now after the internet revolution. Isn't it interesting? And because of that, we're still able to communicate with each other, even though there's lockdown. Imagine if COVID happened before the internet revolution. We would have been really locked down and isolated. So let's use this opportunity of lockdown when we have nothing else to distract us. Making money is put on the back burners at this point in time. But now is the time for us to talk to each other, to have real conversations like the ones we're having right now with each other. The question is it just going to remain a conversation, or are we prepared to take this to the next mile? That's what I hope we can discuss in a few moments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Viswa. Absolutely. Both of you give very, very strong points. And for me, I'm very much for a spiritual warfare, for righteousness, and creating anything, any kind of solution that will bring us together, that is going to bring a greater truth. Is that Kirpal?
That could be Kirpal.
That could be, let's see. This is a war that's happening, but I don't feel that we need to go out and do a physical battle, that we're going to have an angry world. We are already in the middle of an angry world. Let's not focus on that. Let's be in the light. Focus on the light and grow that light. And the dark, the symbolism of the darkness, the virus is a symbolism that eventually go away. So we need to grow this community. And I do agree that mediation is a solution. And I also do agree that knowing about these groups, we need to know why they exist, but not to focus our energies on them. That's my perspective. But to be aware.
If I could just add, you're absolutely right. One of my favorite proverbs is a Tamil proverb. Translated in English, it reads, you will never appreciate the value of sunlight. You'll never appreciate the value of shade unless you have experienced harsh sunlight.
Yeah.
If shade is all you've experienced in life, you will never value it. But you will start valuing it when you suddenly face that harshness of sunlight. You will never value the power of the candlelight unless you've experienced darkness.
It's the duality. Sometimes we just...
It's a duality.
We need that.
And we do need it. We do need it, right? We do need COVID. We do need the adversities. We do need the adversarial cliques and groups for us to say, no, this is not what we want. We are often knowledgeable and aware of what we want I think it's more important for us to know what we don't want.
Yes, I think focus on what, yes, and awareness. Being blind is not a good thing. What Professor you shared is very, very important. We need to be aware of these things so we can focus our energies on what we can do in terms of goodness and building those values, those righteous values. Yes, and focusing on education. That's the next step. We talked about mediation. Now about education. I want to make sure that we covered the various parts, because I don't know whether Kirpal has managed to come online, but we also have a segment for Q&A, and we have a line of people who are ready to ask questions. And we've set aside 20 minutes for Q&A. We finished latest by 4:30. Now it's 3:49. So I want to go into education and leadership. These are also very important points. Viswa, when you and I were talking last time, I was sharing with you how I felt that we don't have enough leaders. We have too many followers and bystanders. There is a leader in everyone. And how can we instill this leadership? Would you like to share more on that? Yeah, go ahead.
Very quickly, thank you for the opportunity, Tahira. I think we have been very focused on leadership that is management driven. The MBA courses in the world teach us the quantitative aspects of leadership, which is important. But I think being forced right now because of COVID to hit the reset button, I think leadership has to pivot a lot more towards adding value through values. You see what I mean? Value-based leadership, values-based leadership is what is going to add value on the leadership front. We have put that on the back burners for way too long. We have suspended the importance of values in understanding leadership. Values such as authenticity, right? We are losing sight of the importance of authenticity. How many leaders do we have in this world who are truly authentic? And authenticity is actually the basis of truth and of leadership. Now, if you look at Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, why is she applauded all around the world today? Because she stands out. She stands out from the rest of the leaders in this world. Because she's unabashed in the way she comes out to present to the world, to her own people, who she is, warts and everything. She is unabashed. And that's the kind of leaders that we want. People we can trust, who are not duplicitous, who are not chameleons. That's the first thing. Okay. Secondly, we need to understand the basis of power that comes from authority, right? Authority gives power, and we give people authority to be leaders. But the power that comes with that authority has to be used through influencing people and not through coercion.
Okay.
That's important. That's the kind of leader we want. And finally, when you have a leader, when you have more leaders who are authentic, when you have more leaders who use the authority and the power to influence and not to coerce, you will find greater accountability in the kind of leaders that we have. So for me, in this world, the management style of leadership, the leaders that are being churned out by the MBA schools, right? They are not enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kirpal, welcome.
Thank you so much, Viswa. Kirpal, welcome. But I just want to, Kirpal, yes, welcome. We missed you, and we're almost going to end soon. But first of all, just listen in for a second. Just listen in. Viswa, thank you so much. Professor Ayran has a lot to say. Okay, Ayran, please make it brief. Okay, I know you have something to say, and it's I can see it. Say it, all right, but be brief, yes. And I would like to introduce Kirpal. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, for me first, Tahira?
Yes, we are. Ayran, please say what because I can see you have something to say.
Okay.
I want to introduce Kirpal after. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm a bit late. Yeah.
Ayran is going to respond to Viswa first, and then after that, I'll introduce you because he's got something.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
Ayran, proceed. Okay, go ahead. Professor, we're waiting for you.
We are, if I correctly, we are very, very powerful spiritual war. What is happening here in the manifested 3-dimension that we are is the result of a massive spiritual war that is happening. This is my particular cosmology, literally between good and evil. So given that, I'll go back to what I said before, and that is that various people, different people have different things to do. I can fully see that Viswa is an absolutely lovely, excellent person and a very good attitude, and moderate with people, to go and arbitrate with people, to go with people that are interested to have discourse. What I'm talking about is a war managed on the planet here, where there are extremes, and those extremes need to be tackled by the people who are the warriors in humanity, and that goes all the way to lethal force at times. People will not be involved in that. The need to do is to actually support their warriors in the war that's going on. And what's happening now, even from the words that Viswa just said, if I were to tell you how misinformed and disinformed the population is, including everybody probably that I'm speaking to here, you wouldn't believe it. You would be absolutely, totally amazed. Because some of the people that are, and I'll mention Hollywood stars, for instance, Hollywood stars that look like they're lovely people and they're very nice and they produce beautiful films and they seem to be very reasonable. These are some of the ugliest, most evil people in the world. And the same thing goes for politicians, including one that Viswa just mentioned, who looks so nice, pleasantly. And if I told you what is behind that, and I think that you will find that out even in the next 2 or 3 months, that the most lovely appearing are some of the ugliest, some of the most destructive people that we actually have among us. And to finish, what I think will happen is that this war which is going on will end. It will end reasonably soon, or at least the turning point will happen even this year, even in the next few months. And after that, what we will have is what you, Tahira, and Viswa can function in beautifully. Yes, there will be disagreements and there will be mediation that's needed. The fish, the rotten head has to be cut off the fish in order that we get into a world where civilization, where reasonable culture, where moderation and arbitration is possible. So I'm repeating myself in saying that the arbitration with people that have been so indoctrinated and represent evil is not possible. It's very sad, but there it is.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Professor. So I hear what you're saying, and well, the different perspectives, and also I do agree there is deception sometimes in terms of what people. There's a word for this. They look very. They have a lot of empathy, but the hidden agenda behind it. But this, what you're also saying, is very correct. That we need emphatic leadership, and let's go back to the point on leadership. I know we can go into this war and all that, but let's focus on building the right leaders, and this is a solution that we can take on. Looking at the other way of fighting, I don't know, that takes a different approach. That is not for everyone. It's not for everyone. Yeah, but you do have a valid point. But I would like to move on and just introduce Kirpal briefly. Kirpal, just take note that we don't actually have much time.
Yep.
Please just a one-sentence introduction. Now, please note of the topic. We were exploring the narrow definition of truth, and we're looking at some of the solutions. We looked at mediation, and then we talked about leadership as one of the solutions. Now, Kirpal is actually the chief judge for the Golden Door, and he's a poet and he is literary culturalist for Singapore. Sorry that you couldn't make it earlier, but Kirpal, would you like to say a few things? I know you missed the first part, but you know what we know the topic. Would you like to share your inputs?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think let me begin by saying that the theme of truth has besotted humanity from probably day one. I've often wondered to myself what Adam would have thought about humanity being alone. And then, of course, God decided that Adam needed a companion. I think there is something very, very profound in that opening statement that I've just made, meaning that we don't exist as solo individuals. We are not, human beings are not very comfortable being put in silos. And one of the techniques that leaders and leadership has always known is that one very good way of making a person totally proud, but at the same time totally and thoroughly inefficient, ineffective, is to put him or her in a silo. Quite often those silos are prison camps and isolated solitary cells, but also very often they are anonymous, meaning that you can be in society, you can even be championed by that very society you're in, but the fundamental message that you may contain or want to convey is very cleverly hidden away from the masses at large. In other words, you are there, but you are inefficient in terms of communicating the real truth, or in plural, the truth that you want to put across. And I think in our day and age, this has been probably, I think, most efficiently hijacked by advertisers and sponsors, people who actually fund the public media. And therefore, the media themselves have become somewhat, ineffective in trying to convey truth. And so they modify the truth in very, very subtle ways because they're also beholden. And, I remember, I think Viswa, fellow Singaporean, and Tahira, you are, of course, too young and beautiful for this. But you'll remember Lee Kuan Yew actually saying, right, that there are many snares out there, and we have to be very certain where our support is really coming from. Meaning it may come from organization ABC, but he was interested where the ABC really was. And there was a very notorious incident in Singapore. I think Viswa was very young then, but I was just growing up as well. But we remember, all right, the plot was uncovered by the help of several governments, but finally it was exposed. And the the government that was ultimately traced to be responsible for this couldn't sort of apologize enough. But what happens is that, the following decades were years of pretty uneasy relationship. So it's like a friend who says he's a friend, but once has been exposed to being less than a good friend, then that friendship takes time to heal and to come together again. Sometimes it takes 40 years, sometimes it takes 50 years, sometimes it never happens. It might take a lifetime, maybe in heaven or hell or wherever they are. So I think the search for truth, especially the golden truth, remains as urgent, as important, as necessary now as it ever was. That's what I've got to say. And I don't think any one person has the sacred door through which he or she can walk today and say, I have come back with the truth. It's interesting. Jesus did say, I'm the truth, the way, and the life, and everything. But even poor JC was subjected to a lot of punishment. Ending up with his poor crucifixion, right? So the thing is, if we want to stand up for truth, we must also be standing up for the punishments that may come with our standing up for truth.
Okay, thank you, Kirpal. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry I'm late. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, thanks for your point of view. We have not spoken about a couple of things. Viswa, what are the other solutions that you had in mind, which you feel that should be put across today? Possible solutions.
Very quickly, I think we should ride on the democratization of knowledge.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The internet revolution has actually democratized knowledge. And we are seeing the pace of democratization growing exponentially. And I think we should ride on this. It is very inefficient, but it is in inefficiency that quite often you find truth. Right? When you seek efficiency, expediency overrides truth. That's what normally happens. So you see what I mean? We've been working, especially since the first industrial revolution, the modus operandi has always been efficiency, right? The industrial revolution has actually pushed everything towards efficiency. Efficient balance of demand and supply, so that wastage is minimized. But very often when you find truth, when you search for truth, you will find truth where inefficiency resides. It's very interesting because it's very easy for expediency to push aside truth and have truth feigned as a proxy. But if you really are searching for truth, it is likely to be an inefficient process. Now, democratization of knowledge results in greater inefficiency.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? That's the reason why, for the longest time, civilizations have always created a pyramid which is narrow, with a very, very narrow top, so that the elites are the ones who possess and own knowledge. And with knowledge comes power, right? And the masses, those at the base of the pyramid, are left out. But that resulted in efficiencies that we have all benefited from. But COVID has actually played a leveler role. We have all been set back about 40 years. We've been set back about 40 years. And all of a sudden, we have so much of time in our hands to sit at home and ponder. And this is what I think we have been tasked to do. COVID's greatest responsibility, and providentially, is for us to take the time, to force us to take the time to reflect. Reflect based on the knowledge that we have all been recipients and beneficiaries of because of the democratization. Today, we have so much of direct access to knowledge. And with that knowledge, and with the time that is now given to us thanks to COVID, I think we start searching for the truth, albeit in a manner that's inefficient. But this truth, this search for truth, will result in the ultimate efficiency in the years ahead, because it will result in significant shifts in paradigm, in very, very significant shifts in paradigm about the distribution of wealth, about distribution, because we have enough in this world, but it is about distribution. Take the Singapore Parliament, for example. It took us so long, and it took us so much with COVID for a truthful discussion in Parliament about the distribution of wealth.
Okay.
Am I right, Kirpal? You saw that.
Yep,
but
absolutely.
This is the first time, I think, in the history of Singapore that we are having such an honest discussion in Parliament about the importance of distributing wealth and distributing the truth across the spectrum. That's my view. So education and democratization must continue, but we must be prepared to suspend efficiency in the search for truth.
Correct.
Okay. All right, Professor, do you have something to say about this? Because, okay, can you please be brief? Because now in 3 minutes, we're going to open up to Q&A. Sorry about this, Kirpal, I actually want to hear a lot more from you, but we're just short of time. But
no problem, yeah.
We get the people involved because it's been there for a while. Ariane, do you have something to say about this? Please be brief. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
You have audio, please. Turn on your audio.
Yes, sorry, I had muted it while the other people were
Please
speaking.
be brief. Okay,
Solutions.
please be brief. Thank you.
Leadership.
Democratic leadership. Go ahead.
Leadership. What I just saw happen. What I just saw was 300 people that gathered in cairns. And what I see happening there, a leadership coming from the grassroots of the people. They're not looking for some big figures that are going to be the leaders. They are taking personally and say it is up to us to start talking to our friends. Use the internet. We gather there in groups and combinations, and we find other people. We are sharing information. With that information, with that knowledge, there is popular now arising, and that popular movement is one of awakening, and that's what I see as a solution. Solution, what they're recognizing is that different roles to play. There are people that are on.
Okay.
Since have to do it legally.
Please turn on your video.
Have to do it with lethal force when they're blowing up military and rescue children. So this information which people spread among themselves. Some of them are quite obvious in Australia. Politicians, they didn't want to be the kind of aura and the kind of power and so on that it gives them, genuinely facilitating their communities toward allowing people, permitting people, helping people in their own communities and so on to do the best. Powering of humanity happening with this awakening by what Tahira, what I call goddess, the creative source. Consciousness is now increasing massively on the planet. And with that consciousness, we go through the golden door that Tahira is talking about. The ordinary people in small places, in larger places, learning that possibility. They're taking power, first of all, and I agree with Viswa, that the current so-called virus has necessitated them to take time, and they are taking that time and they are spreading it. So there's a real popular movement, and the people are going to be the people who are going to resolve it. There was an Indian architect, I'll end with a quote, Arundhati Roy. She's an architect, and 20 years ago, she said there are now two powers in the world. The crazy people, the few people who are trying to dominate us, and the rest of humanity. And they called that, she called that speech, we unauthorized. We, the unauthorized, are now taking authority and responsibility, and that's the direction toward the golden door. Tahira.
Thank you.
And Viswa. And Kirpal.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry you weren't here, Kirpal.
Okay, thanks. Okay, please turn on your video, by the way. Please turn on your video. I'm going to bring in the Q&A now. Okay, we're going to start here. Please turn on your video, Professor. Zainul Abidin is there. I'm going to bring him on. Wait. I just clicked. See what happens. Is it added? Do take a look at this one. Look at what Prasanjit has just said. You see on the chat what he's written. I've added Zainul, but I don't see him. It's strange.
But perhaps in the meantime, we could hear more from Kirpal. We haven't heard Kirpal. Maybe you have something to say.
Okay, can you say just a few words? All right. Then I'll bring the Q&A. Anything you want to say? Yeah, go ahead.
I think there are problems, and sometimes it is a bit difficult and maybe even awkward and embarrassing, and at other times maybe dangerous for us to actually speak our minds, because while I agree that numbers always do make a forceful point, I think, it also becomes important for us to note that not everyone that makes a 10,000 protest march actually knows very much about the protest march itself, or maybe about the people who are funding the march or whose interests finally he or she is being asked to serve. by being paid $100 or $1,000 to join in the protest march. Now, what I'm trying to say is not purely coming from a cynical position, but coming from many decades of watching closely societies undergo transformations, and for a while, these societies think they're on the right path, and then they realize that actually, oh my God, they've been taken for a very, very comfortable but unfortunate ride. It's a ride that either stagnates them in their individual journey or the journeys of the nations they might be hitting, or the bodies or societies they may be hitting, or it is a journey that actually goes nowhere. And then they arrive on a desert island and say, hey, this is very strange, nobody else here. And a voice says, well, now you can do whatever you like. But there's no point in my doing whatever I like on a desert island, is there? I mean, the only person who's getting a good, happiness or probably greater frustration is me, right? But the moment there's one other person that I can try to bring onto my side, that's when people become really interested in the dialogue, and the dialogue then becomes a multi-log.
Okay, thank you so much.
It is very critical, because what, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew said once to me, he said, if you just talk in your own little tutorial group, there are only 5 or 6 of you, which is a great thing. But when you're giving a lecture to 400, you got to be very careful that some of the things you share with the 5 or 6 are also not immediately shared by the 4 or 500, because there will be distortions, there will be misunderstandings, and there will be misquotations. So he said, just a word of advice, if you don't mind. I've always wondered what made him say that. And then I realized, yeah, I mean, in a sense, being a university don is a great honor, a great privilege. And a lot of my, students and tutees will not always be what they are in a tutorial room or in the lecture room. Once they're out there in the world, there are different temptations. There are different powers acting on them, from the power of a spouse to the powers of parents, to the powers of cousins, families, extended families, to what the power of the New York Times tells them, whatever mass media might tell them. So I think we are living in a state of what I would call heightened vulnerability.
Okay, Kirpal, sorry I have to stop you, because how this session it works is that once it goes to the limit, we'll close. We need to, we have no control over it, because we only had 5 minutes. I'm going to bring one of the who has been Prasanjit. Prasanjit, you have been writing a lot of messages. Please ask for request access.
What's happening?
I'm trying to bring the audience in, because we have actually a time when we can bring the audience in and they can ask questions. Right. Now, Prasanjit
Tahira has disappeared from my screen. What's going on?
I have not disappeared. I'm here. I have not disappeared.
He's very present.
I'm very much here. Trust me. Okay, so Prasanjit is saying, before we start talking about non-Singaporeans, what's the income distribution between different Singaporean Democrat groups? All right. The colonial economy was underpinned by. Prasanjit is one of our one of the participants. He wrote the book Asia Rising. He's a historian also. So I can't seem to add people. There. Now it's coming online. Okay, his internet is not very good. Prasanjit, please follow my instructions. Okay, you have only 1 minute, because I need to bring at least 1 or 2 more people, and then this is going to close. What you want to say?
Okay.
Right? We don't have time. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I was just responding to Viswa Sadasivan's very pertinent points about the discussion about income distribution in Singapore that has occurred recently. And I think the interesting aspect of it is that Singapore really has a colonial economic structure, socio-economic structure that has persisted, never really changed. There are 2 aspects of it. One is the notion of an expatriate. An expatriate is basically somebody who is at an elevated level relative to the rest of society in terms of income. And on the other hand, are the other types of foreigners here, which are the so-called migrant workers, who are now extremely well known to the world because of COVID. So you have these two parts of the old colonial structure that remain, and that contribute to the extreme skewness of the income distribution. And what is quite fascinating to me is that the colonial aspect it never really enters the debate. The notion of an international school, the notion of expatriate salaries is quite bizarre. And now that I live in Manila, I notice the same thing applies to an international organization like the ADB. They have something called international staff and something else called national staff. The international staff are paid much more. They have all kinds of benefits. You have the same thing in Afghanistan today, or in Cambodia in the 1990s, where the expats are different. So I think we need to also address that little issue of a post-colonial economy, a socio-economic structure that contributes to inequality.
Okay, thank you so much. Good point. Okay, so I have to bring in the others. We've got a number of people who have points to say. I'm going to bring in before Viswa and all respond. I would like to bring in two more people. Let them make points, and then you can answer. Okay? Because they've been waiting for a long time. I'm going to bring.
May I propose something for better audio quality? The rest of us should mute ourselves.
Yes, please mute yourself.
Yeah, for better.
Yes. I'm going to bring two more people in. Okay.
Yes.
Somebody's got their audio on.
Yes. Okay.
What's going on?
Somebody's got their audio on.
Just a repeat. Okay.
Those of us who are not talking should mute.
Yeah, please mute your.
The mute button it's a microphone icon at the bottom of the screen. It's a microphone icon. Just click it.
Ayran, please mute it. Either.
Those of us who are not talking should mute.
What's happening? It's going to close in 4 minutes. So strange. Something's going on. I think Bogdan is saying, Bogdan, who's our technical person, is saying, please, Professor, mute your mic. That's causing the problem. Okay. I'm going to bring, I don't know what happened. I can't add people. I've added just now. This doesn't seem to be happening. Why don't we just wrap up then? Since it's not, something is not happening. I don't know what it is. Okay, so let's wrap up because we only have 4 minutes left. The system is going to close off in a few minutes. So we've talked about, actually, we're looking at two different worlds. The points of views are very different. But in some ways, you have come into some agreement. I can see that. Professor, I don't know what happened to his camera, but Kirpal, since you missed out a lot,
yes, sorry. Yeah.
You want to share one thing that you feel is really important that everyone should hear, in terms of not in terms of definition of truth. I mean, in terms of truth as one, but what we should do about things, like for example in Singapore or more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot begins with education.
Education.
Of course, the first bits of education are transferred by parents and relatives and all of that. But very quickly, we send our students to nurseries, kindergartens, and schools, and all of that. And therefore, the Ministry of Education is pivotal to the greater awareness of whatever we may conceive of as being truth and truthful ways to attaining that truth, and also the path to greater success. I think this is very, very critical. And as the world becomes more, democratic and more freedom of expression is obtainable, then there also will be confusing and confuting voices, meaning there'll be an anarchy of voices, there'll be chaos, and there'll be even greater need for true guidance. And I think this is why maybe sometimes I've thought about the fact that teaching is not a right word. Maybe we should call guiding. Instead of teachers, we need guides. And a long, long time ago, there was a Bollywood movie called The Guide, It's very interesting, of a person who goes in search, and towards the end of the movie is very interesting because he visits all the religious temples, mosques, churches, etc., to find his version of the golden truth. And I think part of the golden truth begins inside of us. And as we grow older and begin to become more aware that other people also have their versions of truth, and we come together to exchange and share ideas, we begin to realize that actually we live in a wonderful, wonderful world. And like most wonderful things, occasionally they run out of battery, they go a little bit crappy, they grow old, and they maybe grow out of fashion. But there's never any harm or embarrassment bringing something that has been out of fashion for 100 years back into play. And one of the things that many of the industrialists of the 19th century warned against the super development of economies at that time was that with increasing money, we are losing our humanity.
Okay.
It is very succinct and very clearly put. Now, Gandhi himself said, because I'm their leader, I must follow them. Was it being silly? Like some people who may not understand would say, here's the leader saying he wants to be leading by following. But I think there was a profound message that Gandhi was trying to communicate. And even today, a lot of people are wondering about that. Because I am their leader, I must follow them. What did Gandhi exactly mean when he said that? We are still trying to unravel the truth.
Okay, thank you so much. That's wonderful, Kirpal.
Thank you.
I'm gonna give 1 more minute before I thank all of you for being part of this. And, we don't have people right now I can add. Now, any last statement, Professor, you'd like to say, or Viswa, who wants to make a point? Fine. No? Viswa, you're right?
Say one quick point. What we talked about, with democratization of knowledge and information, we are going to have, the power is going to become a lot more symmetrical.
Okay.
Because information is power. When you democratize the access to information, you're also making power more symmetrical, which currently is asymmetrical. And when power becomes more symmetrical, you will see a phenomenon, a very powerful phenomenon, which is that you will see a lot more Davids defeating Goliaths.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what you're going to see. And as Kirpal clearly said, when you have that, it is kind of anarchical. And in an anarchical situation where great curiosity and great questions surface, what you need is guidance. I completely agree with that. And I think we should end with that, because I think the teaching, the way we teach our young is, number one, to preserve their childlike nature as long as we can, because that's where imagination resides. Number two, we should go back to the system of not calling them teachers, but calling them gurus. A guru is a Sanskrit term for guide. But that person is more Socratic in the way he imparts knowledge and wisdom. So I think that is the greatest solution that we are looking at. Thank you.
Absolutely agree, Kirpal, Viswa. I believe in the mentors and guides in this journey of this transformation, great awakening. We need mentors and guides. We don't need instructions to tell us what to do. We need people to discover, we need to build their minds and build courage and to discover and to act on their truth. So the men that pave their way instead of restrict their way.
Right.
Yeah, so we need to stop. So it's a revamp of education, which is a huge revamp. And well, it
takes courage, by the way.
It takes courage.
And also education.
Yeah,
and also, Kirpal, if I may add, education should not be defined in a formal sense. Correct. Education takes place from the time you're born. My first educator was my mother.
Correct.
So parents and friends and close comrades are the greatest educators. That's how, but if we put too much of weight on formal education, the informal aspects of education, that's where the guru-ness fails.
That's right.
The greatest gurus are your parents.
Yes.
Absolutely. And the whole education starts from youth till we leave, and we look at the whole sense. Aryan, I'm going to say thank you to everyone. He's gone, but thank you so much. We have 1 minute left before we end. I think it was a very meaningful discussion. We have some synchronicity amongst all of us, and I look forward to seeing you at the next. We've got 10-minute break, and see you at I think it's 4:40.
4:30.
Oh, entertainment. We've got a performance by Israel or Yulamade.
Wonderful.
Okay, please join in 4:40. Take a break now, everyone. Come back at 4:40 p.m. Singapore time. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Viswa. Thank you, Kirpal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It's an honor to have you all. Thank you. Press leave. You see the button there? Leave. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.